Okay, we should be live on Twitter. Let me double check the Twitter to make sure it's working. Okay. Let me also ping my team to let them know that we're live. And yeah, let's get started. So, hello
Oh,
everyone. Thank you for tuning in to another StarkNet Founders Series. Today, we're joined by Nils, the CEO and co founder of Vesu. For those of you guys who don't know, Vesu is one of StarkNet's most important lending platforms. They are honestly the top funnel of our BTC Fi strategy and initiative. So, Nils, would you like to introduce yourself?
yeah, really good to be here. Like you said, I started Vesu with my co-founders. Um, I'm running effectively, daily operations with my team. We are really happy to be part of kind of the Starknet ecosystem with all that's going on around BTC Fi. Really exciting to be part of that, part of the journey, and play an important role.
Actually, I also want to hear about like your background, how you got started with Vesu, and ultimately, like, what was your path into creating another DeFi product? Because you already were a successful founder in the past. So, what made you want to do this again?
Yeah, sure. Let's start at the very beginning, right? I mean, how became I aware of crypto? That kind of goes back to 2014 when I met some of the Ethereum guys before Ethereum was launched in Switzerland, in Zug. I was working on my PhD at that time, and there were some overlaps in stuff that we did. But I have more of like a TradFi background, so when I was able to speak to those, visionaries at that point in time, I really didn't have the mindset for that, and so I thought there were some crazy people, right? I really didn't see the vision at that point. I'm not a Bitcoiner. I haven't been part of like the very very early days of crypto world, so I really didn't get that at that moment in time, right? It took me another couple of years until like 2016, 17, when in Switzerland and like, globally, there was this ICO bubble, right? Where lots of projects actually started launching. Instead of issuing equity or so, they launched a token, right? And that draw a lot of attention from different from different people, including me. Ultimately, we were working on a fintech at the time. Those are also the early days, or kind of the first days, the first steps of DeFi, right? So like the first lending platforms, in the forms that they were then. And what really caught like my attention was that while we were working on some fintech stuff, everyone was actually talking about open finance in TradFi at that time, and how exciting it is because we started to build APIs around kind of the traditional financial infrastructure, right? So now suddenly you could actually fetch your account balance through an API and build some app that now fetches, balances from different accounts, but ultimately under the hood it's still the same infrastructure, right? Still the same walled gardens. And what we saw with Ethereum at the time, and the early kind of days of DeFi there, is that there is a fundamentally different paradigm there, right? It's like an open platform which is global, which reaches every person who has access to the internet, and you build services or products on top of that platform that are unstoppable ultimately, right? um, Composability and all of those things, which ultimately led to DeFi, taking off, more in kind of DeFi summer and all. Those were really the aspects that caught my attention, and I decided to actually shift full time to building in DeFi in 2018, I think it was. One of the first projects we did at the time was actually, we would call it now something like RWAs. Was way too early at that time, but it was very exciting and very important lessons, to learn, building on Ethereum and building DeFi applications. And so, yeah, DeFi Summer, we've been building ever since 2018. All sorts of things, including lending and stablecoin, CDP stablecoin protocols. So I'm very glad that I've been able to be part of this for such a long time already. And I think where we stand now, the market overall, DeFi, crypto, it's even more exciting to be part of this whole journey now.
That actually makes a lot of sense. How you came from a TradFi background and made your way here. In that entire journey, did you ever feel for a moment that the existing lending protocols just weren't working? Like there was fundamentally something misaligned with what DeFi is supposed to be?
Yeah, I mean, we all know about that DeFi is not always permissionless, right? That there are various layers on which a product, a DeFi product, can kind of diverge from those fundamental kind of values, right? I'm not so sure it's on an ideological level where we started to see that there may be an alternative to how lending specifically was done, and more from a scalability perspective, right? Because what we've seen in lending specifically from like day one is that there was always the DAO model, right? There is like an entity that has certain control and exercises certain control with the idea that they do risk management on behalf of users, and that's a central entity, and it ultimately controls how the protocol can grow and expand to different markets, right? And whenever there is someone in control, whenever there is an entity, there are many things that are going on, including politics and sometimes drama and so on. And there have been many valuable lessons over time. And so what we actually saw is that, well, isn't that also limiting, the growth of a protocol? Or should an infrastructure like this not just actually be fully open and permissionless, right? And we've seen that with DEXs, Uniswap and DEXs from like day one, they've always been permissionless. Everyone could create new markets, right? That wasn't the case for lending. So I think it's more like this perspective of, well, maybe we could actually grow more, scale better if there wasn't this central kind of unit having certain control and making decisions.
Exactly. And that's why, the title that we decided to name this space is Who Controls Lending? No one. Um,
Mhm.
and can you now tell us, like, what is Vesu?
Yeah, I mean, very simple. Vesu is a non-custodial lending market that's deployed on Starknet. It's at the moment, I would say, the best place where you can borrow and earn yield with Bitcoin assets, different Bitcoin wrappers, but also all sorts of other crypto assets, really. Um, it's non-custodial, I said already. It's also fully permissionless, which means there is no central governance that controls which markets can be created, um, that controls which assets can be onboarded, and so on. So that means there are multiple actors, curators that can come in and that are already active and operating on the Vesu protocol, who launch new lending markets as they see, potential for growing, the market, for growing borrowing activity. So that means also for Vesu, for ourselves, we're actually not in control of everything that goes on. Effectively, we cannot stop people, from creating new markets. But if you break it down again, it's a non-custodial lending market. You supply assets, you can use those assets as collateral, you earn interest, and you can borrow assets without anyone else having control of your funds.
Awesome, awesome. And most DeFi protocols rely heavily on governance, and Vesu doesn't, right? So, like the thought of removing central governance from lending markets, the same decision probably tied into your decision of why you wanted to, remove governance as well, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's exactly that, right? I mean, if we go back to what crypto ultimately is, right, or what Bitcoin is, what Ethereum is, it allows us to have full control over our assets. What that ultimately means. It means freedom, right? We can go wherever at any point in time, wherever we want to go, and we can take all those assets with us. No one can take that from us. And in the same kind of spirit, DeFi has always been an infrastructure, right? A protocol that runs on an open blockchain, and that should be as permissionless as the underlying assets are, right? So that's really the idea there. Again, governance, and the concept or idea of bringing in governance, of course, had some good arguments behind it, right? But if you think about why governance exists, right, in the first place, it's to have control over some things, right? In a good way. The intention is good, right? But it's ultimately about having control. And we don't want to have that control in the Vesu lending protocol. We want for everyone to be able to create new markets, to onboard users as they see fit, because central governance means risks, but also because it limits the growth, right, and the scalability of this infrastructure.
That makes a lot of sense. I also see how, in some protocols where the folks just aren't very active in the voting process, it ends up being like one or two people who actually vote and end up controlling the governance and the decision of the fate of the protocol. So I actually really appreciate you sharing this. And Vesu places a strong emphasis on making risk transparent too, right? So, like, what does that actually look like for a user?
Yeah. Um, So first of all, why is that important? If you have multiple curators being active on a protocol, launching new pools, lending pools, and so on, this can also mean risk for users, right? Because now, where am I actually depositing my assets into? It's not this Vesu team that has control over the pool; it's someone else, right? So by design, I need to have more information when I interact with a lending market like that, because I need to know which lending market, which curator on that lending market, what are the exposures that I have, and so on. Practically speaking, for a user, it means you have all the information you need to make up your mind whether a certain market matches your risk profile or not. So that means you need to know what the collateral assets are that could potentially borrow the assets that I'm depositing. You need to know what the liquidation parameters are, liquidation loan to values, what liquidation bonuses are. Ultimately, of course, also important around APRs, so the yield that you're earning. Is it gross yield? Is it net yield? Are there any fees or so on top? So just have the information that you need to make up your mind. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also wanted to ask you, like, why did you choose StarkNet? Like, what specifically did StarkNet provide that it enabled you to, have Vezu be on it, and like, why wouldn't it be feasible on like Ethereum mainnet?
Yeah, that's a good question. And there is a good answer, of course, for that. It's not it's not just randomly. We've always been building on Ethereum mainnet, and we've of course been looking at the space of L2s and all, kind of making a lot of progress. What we really wanted to do is to build product that feels more like Web 2, right? So ultimately being able to onboard more users that are not kind of these native crypto users. And for that to achieve, Ethereum mainnet, of course, has its limitations, right? In terms of scalability, cost of transactions and all. And so, L2s, of course, um, have been working towards that. And Starknet, when we were looking around, for which ecosystem, which community would actually profit from a lending market and this new lending model that we saw, we really identified Starknet as the best fit for us. And that has a reason with scalability, but at the same time, we still inherit a pure, security from Ethereum in the sense we have mathematical guarantees, that whatever transactions are being generated are valid and not other sorts of guarantees. So that just all felt very appealing. And then one additional thing that was also important for us, and still we still think is really a feature, kind of a killer feature, I think, is native account abstraction on Starknet, which allows accounts and wallets to be much more flexible in how they execute certain things. And so ultimately, that means for us, we are able to offer kind of a one click or one transaction experience. Whatever you do, there is always only one transaction you have to sign. There is no sign an approval and then do something else. So that all of that felt really appealing.
Absolutely. Something I really appreciate about Vesu is it's friendly for people who are not DeFi native. If you're like a first time user of DeFi, you can just like browse through the different vaults, and you're right, it's just a one click. I love that you guys also integrated so many wallet options, including one of our wallets that's built by Cartridge, where literally you just kind of like pick a username and boom, you have a wallet on Starknet. So you guys have really thought through the user experience. And a follow-up question is like, how has building on Starknet changed how you think about your protocol design?
Yep. I think, protocol design, on the one hand, you have the economic incentives that you're trying to design, right? Which ultimately do not depend so much on the blockchain, the underlying blockchain itself, right? So I think from designing a lending market, what are kind of the basic, incentive mechanisms and all, that doesn't change. But there are always sometimes small things which can make a big difference in how you implement stuff, right? And one of the things, it's very technical, really, right? But one of the things is how storage and compute is priced, right? It's really different than if you're building on Ethereum L1 at least, right? And so we started working with our Ethereum background, and we were building how we were used to build and paying attention to reads and writes, right, of storage. And at some point, we realized, wow, we can actually be we're much more flexible in how we access storage, for instance, and stuff like that, where implementation itself becomes much easier because you don't have to pay so much attention to those small details. So it's very technical. I'm not sure if this answers your question.
No,
I think just one other comment, which is always important for DeFi, is around MEV and the tech surface. If you have MEV, at the moment, and when we started work building this, this was non-existent really on Starknet because of how L2s in general work. So that also simplifies certain things. But, and we are all happy about that, Starknet is decentralizing, right? So this roadmap includes actually also opening certain MEV attack surface. So that will mean all of the knowledge that we still have from Ethereum is very valuable, and will help us.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree. I would like for you to demo Vesu and share your screen. But before we get to that, um, I just want to ask you, like, what should people pay attention to as you walk us through Vesu?
Mhm. Um, yeah, let's say UX, right? So first of all, there is only one transaction you have to sign for whatever you do. So we're going to do some more simple things, but also more complex things that involve multiple steps, let's say, multiple actions. But there is always only one transaction you have to sign. So that's one thing. The other thing, maybe look at the cost of those transactions. That's nothing that is really where we get credit from, but Starknet. So it's actually cheap to be active on Starknet. And then anything else about UX, also if after kind of this demo, if there's anything that you didn't like, I'm really happy to get that feedback too. We try to make UX very seamless.
Okay. So if anyone listening has any feedback, feel free to tell us in the comments. And also, what's one feature that you think people underestimate until they actually see the interface?
Um, I would say it goes back to UX. And so the fact that this is an open landing protocol where different actors, different curators can launch their markets, right? Um, that also has its implications for UX, right? So it's kind of difficult to actually, how do you make this look nice now? Because there are all these different markets and stuff, right? Um, so what we try to achieve is a similar UX than like the more traditional lending markets where you only have one DAO who actually controls stuff, um, while at the same time kind of hiding all this complexity in the background. Um, so you shouldn't see much of this overhead from having different curators and different markets unless you want to see it. And if you want to see it, you will find all this information.
Amazing. Amazing. Okay. Do you want to start sharing your screen?
Yep, let's get started. Okay, so you should see the Vesu landing page now. Is that correct? Can
Yep.
everyone can you see that? Perfect. Cool. So this is where you land if you type in vesu.xyz. Um, you see some basic information here, right? How much is currently supplied on Vesu, how much is borrowed, overall markets. You'll see a bunch of first markets here, some, USDC, Repsec VEEV, WBTC. Those are all markets that you can easily access to lend or borrow from. You have a connect wallet button here. So we are just going to connect the wallet that I'm usually testing with. It's not the cartridge controller. I'm sorry. It's this wallet here. Like you said before, so that's the Ready wallet. We support all sorts of wallets, so also Xverse, Bravos, and so on. You will find that if you connect to Vesu.
Amazing.
So
Yeah.
this is
There's so many markets. So if I were a first time user, like, which one should I choose? And then we'll get to the, if I were a pro user, like, what should I, toggle with?
right. I'll get into that. If you bear with me for some time, we will get into that. Is that okay? I will answer those questions. I would just start with this now. If you're, like you said, a first-time user or a user who is not that familiar and just wants to supply, let's say, some USDC or so, you would land here and you have kind of those main markets right away. So those are the assets that you're actually interested in. And you would say, let's connect to USDC here. And you can instantly supply or borrow from this interface. If you look at this market here, there are a couple of things you need to pay attention to. So, okay, this is USDC, the asset. So there is actually an information already here about the market, the pool and curator that you would find. So this is called the prime market. It's curated by Vesu. There are a total of 3 million deposited here, and you have all sorts of information that you need to make up your mind, right? When you lend, when you supply money, what's important too is you need to know what your exposure is, right? So if you supply USDC, which assets can actually be used to borrow my USDC? So which assets can be used as collateral? So you have all that information here. Those are the assets that could potentially borrow your USDC. You see at which liquidation loan to values. You see the current Oracle price of those assets, and then there are things like a debt cap. So there can be up to 1 million USDT or USDC borrowed with USDT collateral. So that's very important already for you to have an understanding. What's also really important is Oracle. So how is the price actually published on chain for the USDC asset? Here you find information on that. So it's Progma Oracle provider with this feed key. You could look that up on the Progma website. And then interest rate. So this is a traditional interest rate curve here, where you see at the moment there is 46% of the deposited USDC borrowed. So we are at the utilization of 46%, and the current interest rate is 4.77%. And there is additional information. What's also important, of course, security. So some hints at that Vesu is fully audited by different entities, kind of the main names or some of the biggest names in DeFi and crypto. Bug bounty is running on the Vesu code base, and then there is real-time monitoring through Hypernative. So all important information that you have. So let's say, yes, you want to supply assets here. So this account, the Stark Moxie account, the name indicates he holds most of his assets in Starknet tokens, but he also likes BTC tokens. He does like some Ethereum, and he has some USDC to diversify the portfolio a bit. So he wants to supply this USDC in that market here. So we are connected already. Here you find your connected wallet. At the moment, you don't have a position. But let's just supply the 100 USDC that we have. Start earning. You get to see kind of the account change preview, what you actually receive here. So 100 USDC would leave your wallet, and you will receive 99 point something V USDC, which is just a receipt token. That is a claim on the pool that you deposit assets into. And that's it. You execute, transaction is sent, and you'll see your position popping up here shortly.
And
Yep.
does the after doing that, that was super fast and super easy. After doing that, does the user need to do anything else, or will they already be earning their APR?
There is nothing else to do. So you have a position now. You see it popping up here. You're earning. So it indicates you're earning this APR. The interest that you're earning is accumulated actually every block. So all the time, and which means your position will just increase in value over time.
Amazing. And in case users do want to withdraw, is there a time period that the withdrawal period takes?
Though there is no time period, you can withdraw at any time, given, of course, that there is enough liquidity in the pool. So here, if you hover over this field, you would also see More information on that. So there's currently 3.07 million supplied. There is total borrowed of 1.43 million. That means there is lots of liquidity still for you to withdraw your 100 USDC.
Amazing.
Um, if you're fine, let's continue, right? Because the Stark Moxie here, like I said, he also likes Bitcoin. He doesn't like to spend his Bitcoin assets, right? He actually has different sorts, different flavors of Bitcoin assets in the wallet. He does have WBTC, um, and he wants to borrow more USDC. So he wants to take a Bitcoin loan. So he just, arrives here at the same market again, and he would switch to the borrow tab, and he would select the BTC asset as collateral. And then, so let's say he supplies all the WBTC assets. Now, one thing to note here already is when you supply WBTC in this market, you're actually earning 2.19% yield on those supplied assets. You're earning that if you're borrowing or if you don't borrow, right? So here I'm borrowing with this collateral and I'm earning yield on my collateral that I have deposited, which is pretty cool, right? At the same time, I want to borrow USDC. And the USDC that I'm borrowing, I pay 2.92% interest on that. Again, here in the breakdown, you can actually see how this comes together. While the gross APR at the moment is 4.82%, there is actually an incentive, a reward that you're earning for borrowing at the moment, which is through Starknet's BTC 5 season program, which reduces your borrow cost by almost half, some 40%. And that leaves you paying only 2.92% on your loan. And so, with the yield that you're earning on the WBTC that you've supplied and the borrow cost, you're almost at the zero net cost of your loan, right? Which is even cooler than just earning on the BTC. So when you borrow, it's important that you pay attention to the risk of your position. And that is those assets that you supply, they are used as a guarantee, as a collateral that you will actually be returning the assets at some point. And if the value of those assets would decrease to a certain level, that it exceeds the threshold compared to your loan, your position could be liquidated, right? That's how those non-custodial loans work. So you should choose a debt amount that somehow in your risk profile, that lets you sleep well, also during kind of down markets, something that's safe. And here, let's just do 50, which is less than a 50% loan to value ratio. And now you know everything. You have kind of a summary here of what you're doing. This is what you're earning on your collateral. This is what you're paying on your loan. Those are the earnings that you have in dollar terms and the liquidation prices. And so, like we said, one transaction only, you will pay the WBTC collateral, you will leave your wallet, and you will receive 50 USDC in return. So we just confirm, and we're executing our Bitcoin loan, which is, if you think about it, there was no KYC, there was nothing that you had to do, but you're actually getting a Bitcoin loan here, right? And if you compare that to like the other platforms out there, which oftentimes have additional risks like counterparty risk because they're non-custodial and stuff, and then on top, oftentimes these services, you pay like easily 12% interest on your loans. Here you're actually paying almost nothing, and you have non-custodial loans, which means no one else has control over your funds.
Yep. And typically, after people borrow some USDC, what do you see most people doing with it?
There's really different things, right? Let's say the DeFi native people would use that to earn yield again, so kind of arbitrage basis trade type of strategies. So they would take the USDC and deposit it somewhere else or lend it somewhere else where they earn more than what they pay here, which is totally fine. It's an interesting strategy, right? That's also used in TradFi. But then others use it to actually spend in their daily life. And when I say others, that includes me. So, for instance, I use my BTC to borrow in the Ready wallet, and the borrowed USDC, I spend it directly with my card, which is really cool, right? So now I don't have to sell my BTC, and at the same time I can go shopping and stuff. I buy my groceries, and my daughter my daughter's birthday is tomorrow, so we buy her candles and cake and stuff, all off of the BTC that I hold, right? So that's actually mind blowing.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like last week, we did a Twitter space with Atomic, and we were
Mhm.
talking about how some folks are using their USDC, their Ready card, to buy haircuts. Um,
Mhm.
so you can actually spend it in the real world, and you can easily I guess you start seeing how the entire StarkNet ecosystem comes together to allow you to be able to interact with the real world with your crypto. And to backtrack a little bit, how you get WBTC is you can go on Atomic, for example, to be able to swap your Bitcoin on Bitcoin for WBTC on StarkNet. So that's one way you could get it here.
Right.
Um, yeah, and
But just a
wow,
comment here, you have your positions, right? So you also see your loan, your Bitcoin loan now. And so at any point in time, you come back and inspect it, right? When prices change, Bitcoin price, of course, it would affect the loan to value, and you just need to make sure that it's in a healthy range.
yes.
Mm.
Now, do we want to move on to a more senior pro
Yeah,
level DeFi user?
let's do that. Yeah, because our Stark Maxi here is one, right? Um, One of the things he likes is Bitcoin staking. And so Bitcoin staking means on Starknet, you can now bring Bitcoin, different Bitcoin wrappers, including WBTC, TBTC, Solve BTC, and Lombard BTC, and you can stake that to secure the network. And in return, you're earning staking yield, which is effectively the same thing than what you do with Ethereum on Ethereum L1, right? So this you on Starknet, you can also do with your Bitcoin assets. So when you have staking, you also have liquid staking, right? And liquid staking on Starknet, I'll just show this real quick. Endure is a platform, is the liquid staking platform on Starknet. And you can stake or liquid stake Stark, but also the different Bitcoin assets. And what you receive is Bitcoin LST, right? So here there is a Solve BTC LST. It means it's Solve BTC on Starknet that's earning staking yield while you hold the LST asset. Or this is liquid staked TBTC, works exactly the same way. So now you have an asset where you're earning yield on, but it's compatible with DeFi, right? So it's also compatible with Vesu. And to showcase that now, we move to a different mode. So here in Vesu, you have different modes. We entered through the light mode, which is kind of the standard, simple interface. And we'll move to the BTC Fi mode now. BTC Fi, as you can imagine, right, it gives you more opportunities around Bitcoin assets. And what you can do now, for instance, with those Bitcoin LSTs, which earn you staking yield, you can use that as collateral to take a Bitcoin loan. Um, so let's do that. So here we are on a different market. You can see that here. This is the RE7 USDC core pool. So I have already my liquid staking assets in my wallet, and I connect here, I go to USDC, and I want to take a loan, a USDC loan with my Bitcoin LST. So I'm using the liquid staked TBTC asset that I have, right? So now I see I supply X TBTC, which is my liquid staking TBTC, and I have a supply APR of 3.117%. What does that now mean? Um, that's actually pure staking yield. So if you supply those assets on Vesu, the lending APR is zero. And that's because those assets, they cannot be borrowed by other parties. So what you're left with is the staking yield, right? So you earn 3.17% from staking your TBTC asset. And at the same time, you have a borrow APR of 1.29%. Again, you see here that the gross APR would be a bit higher, but you're actually earning rewards too from Starknet's BTC 5C program. So it makes your effective borrow cost even lower now. And we just proceed the same way. We take a loan here. If I would go max, it would be, kind of high risk. So I don't want to lose my BTC assets. I take a loan of 50 USDC. I get my summary again. And the XTBTC leaves my wallet and I receive 50 USDC in return. Executed, and I'll have my new Bitcoin loan that earns me while I'm borrowing USDC, earns me staking yield.
Yes. So essentially, you are earning 3.17% on the interest from the staking. But at the same time, because you borrowed, you have to pay the 1.29% of interest. And so still, you're still earning a difference of like 2 point, I can
Mm-hmm.
do math. But yeah, it's quite
True.
amazing because you now get USDC to use and you're still earning yield at the same time.
Right. And you could, like we said before, some users would now take this USDC that they have borrowed. So here we have already 100 USDC because we have two Bitcoin loans outstanding of 50 each, right? So they would now take that USDC and deposit it back in Vesu or some other lending market to earn more yield on the USDC too, right? So you can even increase your yield even more.
Amazing.
So that's fun. And we can go on and one additional step to
Yeah.
have more fun if you like.
Yep. Let's do it.
For that, we would switch to the Pro mode. So you see it gets more exciting the further right we get here on those modes. There are a couple of things to note when you switch to Pro. Like it says, Pro is meant for more advanced users because it offers more advanced products. And we'll see which one specifically. But also, if you look at the user interface in the Pro mode, it looks a bit different, right? And what you see, is just long lists of all the markets that exist on Vesu at the moment. So here you see all the earn markets where you can supply and earn interest for supplying, or borrow markets. So all the different markets which you can borrow, which are pairs of the collateral asset and the borrow asset. So that's all a bit more overwhelming already, right? But hey, we are in the advanced user mode, so you shouldn't be scared of that. So we'll go to the multiply tab here, on the multiply product. And this involves some additional steps now that are all abstracted away in the background. So you don't have to worry about that, but you need to be aware of what you're doing. So we said here our Stark Maxi still has the liquid staking XSBTC, right? So staked Solve BTC, which earns him staking yield. And now he wants to earn more staking yield on that same asset. What can you do? Like a very prominent strategy in DeFi is So you take your yield earning asset, you supply it in a lending market, you borrow a highly correlated, a strongly correlated other asset where the borrow cost is less than the yield that you're earning on your collateral. And then you convert that asset that you have borrowed into more of the collateral assets on a DEX or wherever, and you supply those assets that you have, converted it into now again in your position. So there are a number of steps, includes lending, includes DEXs, and so you can see that there are more risks and more variables to just pay attention to. But that's ultimately what we're going to do now. So because we have long lists here, there is some filtering that you can use. We want to supply XSBTC, and you already see the XSBTC markets popping up here. They are ordered by how much liquidity is available, which is very important for you if you want to exit your position again. Here we'll select the first one. The first one means you would deposit the liquid staking Solve BTC, and you would borrow Solve BTC to then convert to more liquid staking Solve BTC. So you have a larger exposure to the staking yield. You see the information here is a bit different than before. It's like two important metrics here are how many times can you actually, or how much can you multiply your initial deposit by borrowing? And very related to that, what is the maximum APR that you can earn when you do that? And you see, you can now multiply your, what is it, 3.1% staking yield, base staking yield, to a 21.8% staking yield if you go max risk, of course, which we won't do. So yeah, let's say we just use all our XSBTC. And so one important thing here that we already see, and the error state, right? It indicates that, okay, there is actually not enough capacity here to borrow. And you see that there is a debt cap of 3 Solve BTC. So there cannot be more than 3 Solve BTC borrowed in this market. And the market is already at 3 Solve BTC debt. So we cannot use this pair. We need to go to a different pair, which is fine. We'll do that. Access BTC. There are other pairs that we can use to multiply our staking yield. This one now takes Solve BTC, liquid staking Solve BTC as collateral, and borrows TBTC. We assume, of course, if you enter this position, you have to be very aware that those are different assets, right? So we assume that the prices of TBTC and Solve BTC, they will stay very, very correlated, right? So my position remains safe. So now I enter the amount of collateral assets that I have in my wallet, and here I can now control how much risk I want to take. If I go all the way to the right, I would end up at my 19% max APR, but also high risk. So I'm just going to go something a little bit more moderate. I'm still able with this relatively small multiplier to multiply my staking yield from 3.1% up to 7.1%. And now I said it, right? There are multiple things that are going on, including a swap of the borrowed assets to more collateral assets. That's going through a Kubo, so it's important to pay attention to those things here, which indicate you what is the price that you're actually going to pay on that swap. And if there's a low or high price impact here, it looks good. It's a low price impact. I can safely do that. So I multiply, and if you noticed, it's just one transaction here, right? There are all these things going on in the background, but it's just one transaction that you execute and confirm, and you will have your multiplied staking yield position. So let's see if it pops up. Um, Yep, here it is already. So you see we have a bunch of positions now, and one of these is a multiply position. Um, you have a 3.2 multiplier, and you are earning 7.14% yield on your Bitcoin assets.
Amazing. Amazing. And can I ask you a question about the previous market, the one where it said we reached the max debt cap?
Mhm.
What is a debt cap?
So a debt cap means the curator on that market, here this is RE7, can set a limit as to how much debt can be taken in this specific pair. So the market before was access BTC, solve BTC. In this specific market, users would only be able to borrow up to 3 solve BTC. This is usually a measure to manage risk because you want to scale those markets with available DEX liquidity for liquidations and all sorts of things.
Gotcha. So the for that solve BTC, we would have to wait until some people withdraw out of that market in order for us to enter into that one, right?
You'd have to wait for, yes, people to repay their debt or for the curator RE7 to increase the debt caps as they see that markets are stable and there is enough DEX liquidity.
Gotcha.
But you
That's,
would always be able to close your position, right?
mhm, gotcha. And in this pro section, how is the earn and borrow sections different from the light or the
Mhm.
BTC-Fi one?
The main thing that's different here is just how this landing page looks like. Here you can see that there is like a long list of all the possible markets, right? Which are, for instance, here across different pools and different pool curators. So here you already see, or in this column, this is a market that's curated by RE7 Labs. This is a market that's curated by Vesu itself. And then there are other curators, ClearStar here. So it's just a long, overwhelming list. If you enter one of these markets, you actually get to the same page then than
Gotcha.
before, pretty much the same page.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Nils, for this demo.
Sure, it was fun.
Yeah, it
And
was.
everything worked, right? I mean, you're always nervous about, I don't know, something breaking during the demo, but here it all worked. I'm happy.
Yeah. No, it was so smooth, really, and it's so fast as well.
Yep.
Um, yeah. So now I forgot the name of your wallet. Stark Maxi. Like he's oh no. Yeah, it seems like Stark Maxi is like earning what 7, 8, 9, 10, like 10% yield.
Yes, and that's on Bitcoin assets, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
insane.
it's a crazy.
And we were putting like in the safe mode or like I guess the moderate on the last one. So it's relatively pretty risk averse still. So
I agree. Yep. It's always important for the person entering a position that they enter a position that matches their risk profile, right? So, risky for one person may mean something else for another person, which is why it's important that you and only you have control over how enter positions and stuff.
yeah, exactly. Now, looking forward in time, what do you want Vesu to look like in 2 years from now?
Yeah. That's a good question. I want two things. I want Vesu to actually be less visible, in the sense that Vesu is there, Vesu grows, but most importantly, Vesu is an infrastructure, it's a protocol that powers different products. So it's not just our app, right? That's just one way of interacting with Vesu. But already today, you can use Vesu through the Ready Wallet, take a Bitcoin loan in wallet. And there will be many more products that are built on top of the Vesu protocol as an infrastructure where you don't even know maybe that you interact with Vesu, right? So that's one of the things that we will that we will see in 2 years' time. The other thing is that hopefully we'll see Bitcoin native loans. Um, so where, as a user, you could also choose and opt to not um, um, uh, use wrapped Bitcoin, but actually native Bitcoin on the Bitcoin L1 as collateral to take a loan on Vesu.
Yeah.
That's my wish list.
I mean, so the first one sounds actually very doable for us to go out, do BD, integrate with other neobanks or centralized exchanges. But for the second one, what needs to happen in order for us to not need to wrap our Bitcoin?
Yep, that's why I say hope that's a goal for us. If it's in 2 years, maybe it's later, maybe it's earlier. But of course, we need to the vision for Starknet is to be natively scaling Bitcoin, right? Meaning we can settle transactions through Starknet on Bitcoin ultimately. That's a big vision for now. That's kind of the end goal. But there are intermediate steps that we can take and that we're looking into, where we could enable similar guarantees and assumptions already before something like this happens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I agree. And from the user perspective, what kind of users do you think should be paying attention to Vezu right now?
Well, I mean, pretty simple. If you're into Bitcoin, if you have Bitcoin assets, if you want to earn yield on your Bitcoin, or if you want to take a loan while not selling your Bitcoin assets, but still keep full control over your assets, um, that's definitely, you should definitely check out Vesu. You should definitely check out Starknet and Starknet's BTC 5 season program. There are also other opportunities on Starknet, by the way, outside of Vesu. But then also, you know, any other user who likes to do DeFi stuff, I think we have a pretty nice UX. So check Vesu out.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Nils. Final thoughts. Oh, sorry. Sorry. Final thoughts. What's one thing that people should walk away from this space remembering?
Take a Bitcoin loan and pay zero interest net. You're earning on the supply Bitcoin and you're paying less or the same on the loan that you're taking. So live your life, keep your Bitcoin, spend whatever you need in your daily life, but keep control. It ultimately means freedom.
Exactly, exactly. If we're all buying Bitcoin and holding on to it anyways, it's like storing cash under your mattress, right? You
Right.
could be earning on your Bitcoin instead and still be borrowing some USDC and getting a haircut and buying candles.
Exactly. Yep. I every time I actually buy something, it's a bit dangerous. Every time I buy something, with the card that's backed by my Bitcoin, it's really nice. It's a nice feeling because I always think about, oh, that's my Bitcoin working for me, right? So it's a bit addictive. You need to pay attention to it, but it really has an impact on your life.
Yes, it does. It does. Well, thank you so much, Nils. Thank you to everyone who listened in today. I hope you found this very informative. And yeah, go check out Vezu and put your Bitcoin to work. Thank you guys. I
Thank
hope you
you.
have a great weekend.
Yep.